Right. Kia ora koutou, ko Wendy aho. Hi everyone, my name is Wendy, and I'm a student here at Lincoln University. And today I'm going to be talking about estimating colony dynamics of karoro, or southern black-backed gulls. Does work. So why karoro? So during my undergrad here, I got to do a Māori studies paper, mahinga kai, and it was a really interesting paper that I got to do, and it kind of helped me see the world from a different perspective. So learning about te o Māori, different mahinga kai species, where they might be harvested, the seasonality of when they might be harvested, and how that all kind of worked. And then straight after that, I came to my first Braided conference in 2019, and a big focus of that was looking at karoro and how in a lot of areas they're a problem for the other at-risk braided river birds. In addition to that, I've been volunteering at the South Island Wildlife Hospital since 2017. I've had the privilege of working with a whole bunch of different species, which has been amazing, including a 3 gull species, which I've really learnt to appreciate in my time there. And they've got a winning personality. So, they're cheeky, they're really smart. If you watch them long enough, you can see them kind of eyeing things up and working things out. They're kind of like that naughty clown in class where they're annoying, but they've got character and they're cheeky, and I really, really love that about them. So a little bit about karoro. So they are a large gull. Their wingspan is roughly about 130 centimetres, and they weigh between about 800 grams and a kilo. They nest in riverbeds, on roofs, and coastal areas. So that can include sand dunes or cliffs, or around estuary areas. And they eat everything. So they are the Labradors of the bird world. If it looks like food, if it is food, and if it fits in their mouth, it's fair game. So around the world, lots of big gulls have been causing issues. So they are predatory, so they will actively hunt out adults and young of different species, including the little banded dotterel, which a little photo of over summer. But not only are they predatory, they're also competition. So they compete for food sources. They will steal food that birds have already gone through the effort of catching, but also competition for nesting sites. So on the Waimakariri, the upper reaches have higher gravel islands, which are more flood resistant, and on the lower reaches, those islands are lower, so are more prone to flooding when floods come through. And the little guys, no surprisingly, I wouldn't blame them either, don't like nesting near karoro because they're big and aggressive and they try to eat them. So the little birds nest on the lower areas and tend to get flooded out, as in the karoro are up in the higher areas and tend to just kind of watch the water go past and go, oh, that's nice, and then carry on with their nest. So in different places, they've also been a concern for disease when they get in high numbers. So Salmonella and E. coli are the most common. There's also a bunch of other different diseases in different places of the world that have been of concern, and kind of a nuisance when they get in big areas. Big numbers in areas. So the bottom photo there I took a few weeks ago at the transfer station in Sockburn in Christchurch. It's not a great photo because I took it with my phone from a distance, but every white dot is a karoro sitting on the roof of one of those buildings, and that would not have been 50% of the birds I saw there in my very brief visit. Because they're a large bird, they're also a bird strike risk. One of the reasons why they're controlled on the Waimakariri River is because the Christchurch airport is very close by, and obviously trying to mitigate that risk, because I would not want one of those through an aeroplane engine if I was on that plane. So control has been done of large gulls globally and nationally. In Europe, it started around the 1930s, in the USA about the 1950s, and in Aotearoa around the 1960s. So I found a literature, one of the first kind of planned controls was up near Napier, controlling karoro with alpha chlorelose, which is commonly used to control them around the airport up there. So some of the species that are controlled, common species that are controlled around the world, first one is the great black-backed gull. which is this guy here up in the top left. So these guys live in the North Atlantic. So they live in coastal areas around North America and Europe. They're at least 50% bigger than karoro. So a small one of these guys is 1.5 kilos. A large one is 2 to 2.2 kilos. So they're really big birds. The next one is a herring gull, which is this guy in the top right. These guys are similar size to karoro, and they live in Europe and Scandinavia. The yellow-legged gulls, they're Europe throughout the Mediterranean and North Africa, also a similar size. And then our beloved karoro, also known as the kelp gull. So these guys are in South America and they're controlled over there, obviously here, and then Australia as well. And there's another subspecies that lives in South Africa. So have control methods worked? Looking through the literature, it's kind of a yes and a no. So some studies have been really successful and they've managed to, over time, get the populations down for large gulls. Other places, not so much. And in others, it's pretty much just done nothing at all, which is a shame. But the common theme in those areas where it has been successful is consistent and long-term control. So getting the numbers down and then keeping them down. For my research, for my master's, I'm estimating the recruitment rate and looking at breeding data. So that's the number of nests, the number of eggs per nest, the number of chicks hatched per nest when I can get it. As I discovered, braided rivers obviously change and flows fluctuate. So getting to a colony every week is sometimes a challenge. And then the number of chicks fledged. I'll be analysing that data in a population model, which is based off Bosch and Crew. So the model and the study that Bosch did looked at demographic data of the Caspian gull in Spain. And they looked at breeding success, which they defined as the number of chicks fledged as a percentage of eggs laid. So with that, for my study, I want to use it to be able to calculate potential egg harvest rates. So instead of just culling adults, looking at stealing eggs, and in theory, long-term, using mahanga kai and eating those eggs, so we use the resource. And the aim of it is to be variable. So if the population is doing really well, then would probably take a whole bunch of them. If they're not doing so well, or the population drops, then taking less. Because the last thing we want to do is crash the population. It has been done for other species around the world. The passenger pigeon's a good example. We're in a very short time in the US. They went from, there's heaps of them, to, oh, we've just shot the last one and now they're extinct. And we don't want to do that for karoro because they do belong here. So I'll also be searching through the literature and have been looking for mahanga kai and Mātauranga Māori knowledge surrounding karoro, using trail cameras to observe nest activity, and using transmitters to analyse daily movements. So that has come up in the last week where I've managed to secure some funding from ECAN. So thank you, ECAN, joining one of their projects. So that's going to be really exciting. So the objectives for my research is to estimate breeding success of karoro on the Waimakariri and Hakatiri Ashburton rivers, estimate potential egg harvesting rates using the population model, and gain an understanding and knowledge of mahanga kai and Mātauranga Māori knowledge surrounding karoro, using cameras to observe nest activity, and then using the transmitters to analyse daily movements. So summer just been, I had a preliminary season. So it was on the Waimakariri River, and it ended up being one colony and had a total of 58 nests. So the colony is there at G2. So the Waimakariri Gorge Bridge is up there, and back in McLean's Island is kind of down there. So of the 58 nests, 46 were used, 10 were unused, and 2 were lost to flood. Over the whole season, there was 130 eggs, 72 fledglings, which worked out to be about 55% success rate. Breaking that down into like first and second clutch. So first clutch was October to about Christmas time, because Christmas was around about when the first lot of chicks were fledging. So there was a total of 108 eggs, 72 fledglings, which worked out to be about 66% success. So roughly 2 out of 3 eggs survived, which is a lot better than the dotterels we're doing up at Kaikoura. Yeah, and then the second clutch, the eggs laid from Christmas onwards, there were 22 eggs. 5 of those were relayed in nests. Yeah, the nests were reused, sorry. I wasn't sure whether they would reuse nests or whether they would build new nests. But yeah, it turns out 5 did reuse them, and then the rest of the nests were new. And unfortunately, or fortunately, all of the second clutch failed. So eggs either disappeared between visits, or when I was expecting to find chicks the next visit, there were no eggs, no chicks, and the nest had been abandoned. So for next season, I'm going to be working on the Waimakariri and the Hakatiri rivers. My aim is to have a minimum of 2 colonies per river. Data I'll be collecting will be the number of nests and location of nests, which I also did in the preliminary season. So GPS locating them and using paint pens to write a unique code for each nest on a rock and then leaving it next to the nest. I found that very helpful last season, especially when you're getting on GPS and it's saying within 3 meters and there's a cluster of nests. It made a massive difference with trying to get the right nest with the right information. So then number of eggs, number of eggs hatched, and then number of chicks fledged. So for the population model, we'll be using RStudio and use based off the model from Bosch and crew, and then analysing breeding success data to then calculate those egg harvesting rates. So for the cameras, I'll be observing nest activity, and I'm quite interested to see the different interactions, whether it be between parents and young or parents and outside gulls, and especially since that second clutch failed. I have suspicions on who was eating the eggs, but it'd be really awesome to be able to confirm that this coming season. And so with the transmitters, so that's adding on to a current eCan project working with Arowhenua down in Ashburton on the Hakatiri River. And so it's going to be using about 10 units and looking at the daily movements. So 10 units isn't a heck of a lot, but it's more kind of working as a pilot study to kind of see how it works and what kind of data to get an idea of where the birds are foraging or moving throughout the day. Are they staying within the riverbed or are they going out to farmland? So as this research is kind of at the start and ongoing, I would love to hear from anyone who has any knowledge or information around mahinga kai, around karoro, any previous data on their movements, whether that be banding or transmitters. I've found some, but I would love some more, and help with field work. So I haven't secured a level 3 certified bander for gulls yet. If anyone has any information or comments or can help, come see me. Great to hear from you. Thank you very much.